I like hearing more stories rather than telling them. So if you'd like why my suspicion, it's I like prodding questions and hearing the very different experiences.
Well, I'll tell you
that
what we'll
people
do.
have.
We'll
Yeah.
talk about
Uh-huh.
from our experiences. So my experience of being in Kenya,
Uh-huh.
your experience, and then yours of SA.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Because I was going to
Kenya.
move to SA,
Yeah.
but I chose Kenya
Uh-huh.
because Kenya is more tropical.
All right.
And I like that climate and stuff like that. And things like that, you know. So,
Okay.
how long you been here in England?
I've been here for 5 years now. I came here to study my master's and then I stayed to work in tech.
Okay, myself, I came to study. I came in 2017 to do a PhD, and I'm just a recently awarded doctor in security studies.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's needed back in Kenya as well. You know, skills.
I would say the same. It's needed, but also the point is asking my question: what do I have to offer? I have seen our society not benefit from the knowledge that it has and the system that it has developed. If I can give you just a very simple example from my experience, I was studying this part of the country that's very remote, northern Kenya. You probably know about it.
Madeira.
No, Garissa,
Yeah, I know Garissa.
Marsabit, and
I've been
and
there.
Isiolo, yes. But it's been seen for a very long time as a very insecure region, which it is, no doubt about it. But one of the things everybody goes there tries to proffer solutions that you're so insecure, let's manage security for you. And as we speak right now, the government is there militarily. But one of the things I noted is that nobody stops and asks, okay, first of all, how are still people there, right? Because if you took like what you call the Hobbesian way of looking at life, if things are so nasty and brutish, then you wouldn't expect people. But there are people who live there, who live under that constant insecurity and violence. But one way or another, they still manage, right? So that was my question, like, how do they still manage it? Like, how do they go about? And I noted that they manage their own security and they get their own solutions. But nobody is there asking them, why, how do you do it? And the people I was talking to, I talked to so many people and they were saying, you are actually the first one who is actually asking that question to us. Probably by coincidence, but also they probably didn't know that they have some organized system amongst themselves. So if I am to contribute something back at home, I think that is what is needed, right?
But that's really interesting what you said there, my friend, because my first thing would say, I would ask them is, do you feel that you live in insecurity? Because that's their life. I was took up there with a mailman.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they were going to build a hotel. He's an architect. He's going to design a hotel for this man who's a Samburu man from Marsabit.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I pointed out to him, I noticed when we was at the ATM, no one had there's no security guard there with a gun. Usually there's a soldier, as they call it. And he said, why do you need a soldier when everyone has a gun? And I looked around and I thought, yeah, it's true. Everybody either has a gun or a spear or a shield or a sword or something, some weapon.
Yes.
All the males. The women stood within their area of the compound, never go further than the men went. But so they probably don't see it as insecurity, in my eyes. It's just that the government, probably who wants to rule them, sees it as insecurity, as in he can't manage them. But one thing this guy told me, because he was in connection with a lot of the politicians, and he said the government just allows, they give the military jackets out.
Yes.
And you get the corporal, the sergeant, and all that. And that's just depending on where you are in your tribe to what stripes you get. And then the military know who to talk to if there's a problem in the area, but they give them some guns and those jackets and say, just look after your area. And it's an easier way, because if they have tribal fighting and stuff, they don't really need to go send their own people in, they just know who to talk to.
Yes.
Do you see what I mean? So it's an easy way, and they also keep, obviously, Sudanese and bandits and all of those people out of the way. So it was kind of thing, I just saw it that the government just wants to implement their way of life there, because also there's natural resources. And that, but before that, they're not interested. I don't know how you see that.
You know, actually, it's very interesting. My wife here was smiling because I think you asked the question that I actually asked, and that man's experience is what I actually had, you know, going and getting interested in studying the region, because I went for similar meetings and I would notice everybody has a gun, both the security, that is the state security, and the locals who also had there, they were also armed as well, and they were all sitting side by side. And that was the first point I actually asked, what is actually going on in here, right? Where you come and you and the police are both armed. It was totally different from what I grew up knowing, right? Or seeing. You couldn't be armed near a police officer, right? Because you'd be considered illegally armed, right? So that is what I asked, and I know I asked myself. But even when I started the research, I actually started by asking. I had this incredible professor, and who helped me shape the questions. And the first question is actually exactly what you asked, you know, what makes you feel insecure? You know, I didn't come there saying that I am seeing conflict around you. Do you feel insecure or whatever? And I didn't go assuming that they're insecure in the first place. I wanted to start on a clean slate, right? What makes you feel insecure? And what was so amazing, it's less of what we already know, but very unique experiences of what makes people feel insecure, and who protects them is less of the government and who we know as the traditional providers of security, but people amongst themselves, you know. But if you ask them where they go, they will tell you, we also go to the police, but those police are never even effective, right? So usually the people who end up sorting our issues are they call them warani. They're the waranis among themselves, who are just youth and elders, you know, who are mutually connected to their situation, you know, who know what I am experiencing. You know, for them, cattle or raising cattle is their way of life. So the most thing that is at the core is having this secured, you know, their livelihood secured. And anybody who doesn't value that will obviously miss that, you know, because the people who externally think that their problems are housing or lack of food, you know, often end up missing the point. And they would say, you know what, if I lose this animal they have also the problem of cattle rustling, that is stealing of cattle. If I end up losing the cattle that I have to somebody else, it means I'm instantly poor. It's like wiping my bank account clean, right? I won't have any form of livelihood after that. So the people who realize that are the ones who were more effective in responding to their situation. You know, I've seen it. Like, you wanted to say something.
Oh no, it was interesting to see the differences in the responses between men and women in terms of that security question. And I was always, I think you were also surprised to see how sometimes the woman would be like, what makes me feel insecure is my husband.
Yes. and
wait, you both went to Kenya to do the...
No. She was sitting next to me when I was studying everything.
Oh, over Zoom? You did it over Zoom or something?
Yes.
In the height of COVID.
Yeah,
tell him a bit about it.
Yeah, it was... I had planned just to leave before COVID hit, but there were some delays and I ended up being caught up in the restrictions, travel restrictions. I couldn't travel basically, but I said, you know, that won't stop me from doing my studies. And I devised this way, what you call like a digital ethnography, because my study was essentially ethnographic, and I would talk to people and immerse myself in that environment. And of course, not being able to travel, I couldn't do that. But I found a way of doing essentially the same thing without necessarily losing the quality and way of doing things, ethnographically. But in any case, one of the things I noted when I was interviewing women, and they were still able to connect and talk to me, was that there was this lady, over Zoom, there was this lady I asked her, what makes you feel insecure? She said that, of course, she had a lot of things, and she stumbled and said, even sometimes I can be coming out of my work and then I go and get my husband beat me. And I was like, wow, okay, beat you, yeah. And I asked her, doesn't that violence seem to concern you? No, she said, no, actually, sometimes us as women, we need to be beaten a little bit, right?
My grand says the same thing. He said when a woman doesn't know how to shut her mouth, that's when she needs a slap.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which was, it was jaw-dropping, in so many ways. But yeah, it's those things that, you go with a preconceived idea that, this is what these people are struggling with. But, without asking, you can end up, totally, diagnosing the problem in a very different way, right?
But the interesting thing is, with that older generation, is that the women they may not to say they're right to accept the violence, but they can acknowledge that at times they're unreasonable in the relationship when it comes to just going off verbally, if you see what I mean.
Could you elaborate more?
All right, so what I'm saying is, if you hear what that woman said to you,
yes,
she said at times a woman needs that. Now, I'm not saying that's right, but what I am saying is that she's saying that at times we can be unreasonable verbally. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
She can acknowledge that, where nowadays you don't have that. You don't have any acknowledgement that, okay, at times I can be unreasonable. It's just like, if I was a drinker, I could say, at times I am terrible when I come home drunk. I cause problems. There's a reason my wife hit me with a frying pan. That kind of thing, So what was your conclusion for your dissertation, your PhD? That sounds very interesting.
It's many things, but let me say several of them stood for me, and I think it's applicable in very many situations, is that I think talking to people and really not going with some sense of preconceived notion of people's experience, sort of like humbling yourself and for a moment telling yourself you actually don't know. Let me hear from this person what they what their life is and what they're experiencing is it's called to any trying to understand the reality that is that people face, right? And the second one is that knowledge, at least from our African point of view, is that for a very long time we have relied on other people, outsiders, telling either what we should do or what is our own problem and how to solve our own things, but we haven't. And as a result of that, we tend to see solution in other people's eyes rather than what is actually really within us, like the strength we do have, the knowledge that we do have, and the solutions are essentially, probably within us. And whatever we experience and however we deal with things, they are worth and they have meaning, right? This living in this society I've seen is that, they probably had their own chance of experimenting and dealing with their own challenges, right? And they shaped the society the way they wanted to be. But for colonized society or societies that have been, interfered with by other contexts, They do not necessarily have that. Like our own religion, we are told our own religion is inferior, right? But we already had our own religion and system that was, that was there even before everybody else came, right? And it's worthy, right? How we organize ourselves in our society is also, it's just that we haven't studied it and we haven't maybe put a logical frame to it and how it operates and consider it as knowledge and as something that has meaning, right? And solution to our own problems. Yeah.
There's a story about Afghanistan and the American, true story, the American is talking to this Afghan man, and the American general says, I'm going to go down there, I'm going to tell them that we can build them schools and do this and do that. And this man says, no, stop. What you're going to do, you're going to come to the top of the hill and look down on the city and let them see you. And then if they want to, they will come out and greet you.
Yeah.
And then if they want to, they will invite you in. And if they want you, they will give you tea. So they do the shura thing where everyone drinks tea. And then you will be quiet. And you will listen and they will talk to you. And if they want to, they will tell you what problems they have. And see if you can help them. But if they don't need your help, they won't tell you anything.
They won't tell.
And that's a whole different thing. But the American general was like, yeah, we go down there, we can build schools, we can make sure girls can go to school and they don't have to cover their head.
Yeah.
So, no. You got to hear what they have to say. So it resonates what you're saying into me. One thing that struck me when I was in South Africa as well as Kenya is that I'm Caribbean, so we're all at different stages of dealing with colonization. Obviously my thing is the whole slave thing, and basically from what I'm getting from you is it's really about adapting to a new regime, because it takes hundreds of years to really adapt. And we see that now because SA is the last country to really be on their own now.
Yes.
Within reason, even though you haven't thrown out all the problem people, which I think you should have. Yeah, because the Europeans do it. When they go to Second World War, First World War, they hang everybody who was in the Nazis. Do you see what I mean? They remove them from the system, take all their wealth, all of that. But that's another subject. So we're at different stages. We had to be adapted to English ways because we didn't have any choice through slavery. But Kenya and SA, you lot of different tribes have got thrust together, and now you're having to handle that. And you can see with SA how you're handling it now, because you're going through, argumentatively, what you could say is a bit of I'd say the whole of Africa, within reason, is like a dark age period. And the reason why I say that, I don't say it in a belittling sense, I say it in the sense that when the Romans left England, when Christ was on the earth, it took them 700 years to get their act together. So when people look at us as black countries around the world and say, well, you should be doing it within a generation, it's like, how does that make sense?
No, I think that's very insightful what you've said, and I'm also always reminded about the fact that it's next year in 2024 that the South African democracy is 30 years old. So it's only in 1994 that my grandmother, my mother, my granny, all of them could go and vote for the first time. My grandmother was 90 at that time. And when you think about that, I mean, people who 30 years old, you barely know who you are. If you think about even just a human lifetime, it's really not that long. And in the fullness of time, 3 decades, when humans have been around for millennia and millions of years, it's a really small amount of time to have your act together. So while obviously I'm disappointed, I wish we were further, I wish we were, things were working out a lot better, I do think that it's the growing pains of development and of kind of building a state that is strong, that is inclusive, and that is representative of that dream that we had of a rainbow nation. It's a beautiful dream, it's aspirational, it's a beautiful vision that I still really do believe in. But obviously the realities of making that come alive, it's much more difficult. It's not just about a snapshot and like making sure every race, gender, religion, sexual orientation is represented. You actually have to make sure there's equity in the society, and that means you have to empower everybody, and you have to make sure that things are fair. And to your point about, you know, casting some people out, I think with our Truth and Reconciliation Commission, that was a very powerful process to help us with healing, but there's still a lot of work to be done for people to recognize the privileges they have, unfairly so.
I think one of the things that, having studied, you know, building of states, you know, and how states are formed, is that sometimes we think that we can short circuit ourselves to prosperity or, you know, to a very advanced form of life. But even if you look at how societies have progressed, you said, you know, in your experience, in your example, you know, it took 700 years. Like if you take Europe, for instance, even in England, for instance, they took more double the time like the US took, you know, to develop to where they are. In part because they are also able to, you know, what you call like leapfrogging, you know, challenges, and even what, like, for instance, our continent is doing. We don't need to, for instance, ensure that we build a telephone line for every house, right? Because, you know, that technology it's obsolete, and we are moving into a more mobile technology, and that's why Kenya, I think you experience when you are there, you know, it's advanced on that front. But all these things also have to go in harmony with each other, right? Just because we have a mobile phone system, we are still dealing with issues of identity, you know, ethnically consolidating ourselves, and these things take time, you know. So we will fight for probably some time to come. Our last violence that we had, major violence, was in 2008. South Africa, it was, you know, apartheid system, and a whole lot of other states, you know, even the ones that are going through conflict right now, you know, they are still having those conversations. Then they will never short circuit themselves out of that, you know. They will, in one way or another, experience it. It might maybe be lesser, more intense, but you probably still have to go through that process, you know, in order to realize, you know what, we can live differently apart from using violence. Although it's violence that have led you to, you know, to ask that question in the first place, you know.
Well, sadly, you could say, I'm ex-military, so I say sadly, but I just see it as a thing of life, is that the end of the day, it's like, how to put it, you do need a certain element of violence to get things together. You do, especially when you're thrusting different people together. Because at the end of the day, like, obviously we know about xenophobia, and you know, you two are a happily grounded couple. But the question is, if you don't live in England, where would you live? Because you know as well as I do, in Kenya you have your problems every 4 years when it comes to elections.
Yes.
And it depends on what side you're on,
Yep.
as to how it's gonna go.
Yeah.
You know? And the Liberals have been vying for their piece of the pie for however long, even if the leader's not the best man now. He's on his deathbed.
True.
Yeah. So it's that case. But back to, you said something about Rainbow Nation. I don't really agree with that. And the reason why, it's like, think of this, you're having a party, or you come home, and then some people just invaded your house. And now they decide they want to have a party, and you can't stay in your bed, and they're doing all this thing. And then you finally get your bedroom back. You don't even get your bedroom back. They just say, all right, we're going to chill out, bro. And they say, and then you say, well, you can stay here now, even though your gate crash caused a mess, and, you know, done all this and done all that. Do you see what I mean? It's like you've kind of got Brazil had it where they just shut the doors for, what was it, 50 years or 30 years or something, to the rest of the world, and just sorted themselves out. Do you see what I mean? And the problem is, where you still got Western powers still trying to manipulate your governments and do all these things, I don't think having a rainbow nation is going to help the masses of people, because it's those same people who cause problems in the first place or you're still trying to include. So it's like a cancer. Instead of cutting the cancer out, you're saying, well, maybe we can just leave it and it will get better on its own. No, they've proven over time they're not going to get better. Do you see what I mean?
I mean, I understand what you're saying, and I think maybe to just emphasize or qualify, say the Rainbow Nation is a beautiful vision and an aspiration that we work to. And how we get there, there's definitely difficulties on the way. There's definitely a lot of work of how do you square this circle? How do you actually, hopefully in non-violent ways, and sometimes there will be violence, as we saw last July in my country. How do you make sure you get there in the best way possible? But it's an aspiration, it's not the reality. And even if we wanted to paint that picture that is reality, it's not. And there does need to be a level of like accountability. There do need to be apologies. There does need to be a recognition of the issues and to say, actually, how are we going to fix it? And fix it like together. So I think that's, so I'm just saying, I'm not definitely saying that, look, it's like we just let everything go, or we just kind of act like nothing happened, or you accept the inequality and the issues that happen. No. But I don't see a sustainable future where we don't find a way to do it together.
I think things have to get bad before they get good, and that's the cutting out of the cancer. I'll give you an example, and you can vouch for this, my friend. In all our countries of origin, even though Jamaica's not a country of origin, it's a place of where we're taken to, the people who own the land en masse is not necessarily us. Even in Kenya, where you got mere Mount Kenya, look how much the British there. There are leagues of land. SA speaks for itself. The Caribbean certainly speaks for itself in that. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
So we're always going to be in that position of being the underdog. Do you understand? So being nice to somebody who won't give you back your car or won't leave your house is not going to work, because we know it's not going to work, because they never allow it when they have a fight with their neighbours, whether it's World War I, World War II, the concentration camps, the Boer Wars, all those things. They don't tell you about this forgiveness and saying and confessing, or if you don't want to confess, it doesn't matter. They've only come up with that when it was with us as a race. So you've got to ask yourself, really, what are we doing? Do you see what I mean? I hope that makes sense, but if it doesn't, you can point out where I'm going wrong.
Yeah. Okay, maybe.
No, I just want to say that I think my only response to that is like, when does it stop? If we keep perpetuating like a level of violence, I'm all for accountability, and to the extent how that happens. I mean, there's different ways that societies have tried. Not all of them are successful, but I'm not saying let's not hold people accountable. I'm just saying, actually, if we take a violent route, where does it end? Because violence begets more violence, and the problems we have were created by a certain style and level of thinking. If we don't move above that and try to think from our higher selves, or from how can we do things differently, we are likely, whether it's in 50 years or 100 years, we'll end up in the same position.
Were you going to say something?
Yeah, I see South Africa in two fronts. I think the first is, it's a bit of a complicated story, in the sense that the people who are also fighting for that rainbow nation, we have to ask who needs to be included here, right? And who is being kicked out, and who is being told they are not in the right place, and who needs to be brought in. And I say this because even the people who we perceive ought not to be there also call that place home. And that's why I am a bit indifferent, because I can't relate to that point where somebody can come to your house and claim they want a stake in it, but they don't belong there, right? Or it's not originally theirs, right? They took it by force. That's the reality, right? But the generation of who is there now, and I think when she pointed out the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, yes, it's important to reconcile, acknowledging that there are wrongs that have been done on one part of the society, and they need to be compensated, and being given what is rightfully theirs. But also dealing with also that acknowledgement that there are also people who didn't fight, didn't contribute to to those inequalities, like the native, let me say, or white native, the generation that followed them, the preceding generation, and they are not at fault, right? Although they still benefit from that system.
That's the key, isn't it?
Yes, but they are not at fault, per se, right?
Well, it's the same thing with the royals, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
You're saying that wasn't Prince Charles. You're right, it wasn't. It wasn't his policy. It may not have even been his mother's policy.
Yes.
But we know the British enforced apartheid. The Dutch just carried it out. The Boers carried it out.
Yeah.
But what the thing is that you're not going to give back the wealth, though, are you? Because it was ill-gotten gains. So there's a law in England that if I buy something that's stolen,
yes,
and then you buy it, and then she buys it, it has to go to 7 different hands before it can go back. It doesn't have to go back to the rightful owner.
Yes.
So if they can acknowledge that just in their own law, why can't they acknowledge it on the bigger scale? Do you understand?
Yes,
you've got to look at the hypocrisy of what they see and how they see it.
Yes.
Because otherwise it's like what happens, your people see them and think, you get pacified. But really it's no.
Yeah.
It's not acceptable.
No, they need rightfully, that the wealth and what was taken and the reparations, they need to give them back. There's no...
The Jews got it.
Sorry?
All Jews got compensated for Hitler.
Yeah, exactly.
They got billions.
Yes.
Billions and billions. Yeah. Ridiculous amount of money.
Yeah. So I don't deny that needs to be done, but I think I'm more of on a soft spot and say, you need to find a common ground and where everybody would get rightfully what is theirs, right? And compensated. So that conversation won't be easy, right?
Yeah.
But from history, you have always seen nobody, even the current holders of that capital, they won't hand it over easily.
Yeah, of course.
You probably have to take it by force.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, by force.
Yeah.
You won't. That's the only way it's going to happen.
Yeah.
Because they pacify you using those words. We should all get along, Rainbow Nation, all those things. But what they're really saying is just keep them calm, keep them okay, and we'll just carry on as we are.
Yeah.
That's what it is. Do you see what I mean? Yeah. But in reality, if you look at it, it's like, why should you be at their beck and call and have to come over here to study?
Yeah.
Why can your universities be just as good, if not better? Because all their riches is coming from your place anyway.
Yeah, sure.
Do you understand? But you're saying, it's like, that's not how it should be.
Yeah.
DRC, the richest country in the world. But look at them.
True. Yeah, true. Yeah, we are not getting for the price. And actually, I just remember the other day when the US was announcing that their green technology, right? They actually did something that was quite interesting, and they said that, for you to invest in this technology, you have to ensure that a lot of and this is in the example of cars, electric cars, for the government, for instance, to fund it, all the technology and everything has to be manufactured and produced in the country, right? So they are also trying to grab. So we shouldn't feel ashamed of saying this is ours and we are going to govern on how we are going to manage it, right? So if it's resources, we should be able to be in that position to make all those rules and not being told how to manage our own resources,
I think we need to take a leaf out of China's book.
Yes.
When you do close your doors to the rest of the world, and you start to educate your own and sort out your own, and whether you copy, you don't worry about patent rules. You just get a car and you copy it. You learn how to develop yourselves and do things yourselves. Because I'm tired of always Africa being told what they can do and what they can't do.
Absolutely.
It's embarrassing. Do you understand?
Yeah. And it started by being told like whatever you have is worthless, right?
Yeah. Or everything about you is worthless. That's what we were told.
Exactly. Right?
Yeah.
And that's where somebody starts chipping you off everything that you have, and being able to control and manipulate you, right?
What is interesting to me is how clearly people whose countries have been freer for longer have a lot stronger stance in this way. And again speaks to the development journey of like slowly, maybe I guess having a different feeling or realizations of this is not quite how it works.
Remember, as Caribbeans, we got our independence later, but we've been immersed with them for hundreds and hundreds of years.
Yep.
So we know their ways. We know things. So we can't. I wouldn't say we've got one up on you guys in knowing really their behaviour, but when we're telling you something, it's like, look, because you think about it, the Caribbeans and the black diaspora from the black Americans were on the same page.
Yeah.
We were talking about Pan-Africanism from early 1900s, before like around the First World War time.
Yeah.
That wasn't even heard of in Africa.
No, it wasn't.
Do you understand? It's only now the young are starting with social media to say, start to talk about Pan-Africanism. There's a very good educated guy from Zim that talks about it, and you got Vusi, there's Vusi? Yes, I can't pronounce it. Yeah, thank you. Who I follow him all the time. I listen to every word he thinks. But, my thing is, at the end of the day, we shouldn't have to share what is ours.
Yes.
If we want to do things with people, that's different. We shouldn't have to be sharing. You can't tell me what I should accept and what I shouldn't accept. It's mine to do as I please. Do you see what I mean?
And even if we share, let's share in our own terms.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
And that's what it comes down to.
Because that's what everybody in this world
do. None of the other cultures share.
Yeah.
They don't. Think of, we're here, but how many people do you see of us up to a certain thing?
Yeah.
Look at America. America's biggest export is music.
Yes.
Produced 99.9% by black people.
Yes.
But what do black people get from that music? 0.003%.
Yeah. Because
Think
they
of
don't
that.
know the
And then if you
production.
say something like Kanye West, they drop you from a billionaire down to a multimillionaire in a heart overnight.
True.
Because you have no power. You have no grounding, because it's not really your place.
Yeah.
And that's why you don't do rainbow nations.
Yes.
You have your own. Look at it.
No, I'm just wondering, where is our place then?
Well, your place is you can go anywhere in the world. To me, I believe in the world as God's world, but at the same time, you have your home. It's like a mall. London's like a mall because they've made it like a mall, so they've been everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah. But at the end of the day, do you see what I'm saying? Yeah. But it's been very interesting talking to you guys.
Very, very interesting. This is the first time I'm seeing a podcast, and I'm going to scan this, so at least.
Well, to be honest, because this is Pan-African conversation, I'm going to put it on my other podcast, which is called Africa Investor Stories.
All right. Okay.
We hope that episode enhanced your life. We post an interview every day, as well as vlogging on our social media channels. Don't forget to subscribe to get our latest episode.